So tonight's speaker I'm really excited about. As if you've already kind of overheard us talking, you know that Gladys, Jose, is a former student of mine. She was one of my first students when I first started teaching back in a long, long time ago. Not so long ago, it feels like, Gladys, I won't say.
2012.
2012. Right, 2012, geez. So it's with like this, an immense sense of like joy and pride that I'm able to introduce her to you tonight. She is a Dominican American born in Miami. She graduated with a graphic design BFA from the University of Central Florida. And as of now, as of right this very second, she has 5 books under her belt in bookstores that she has illustrators, at least 5, right? At least 5 books.
5 in the bookstore.
That she has illustrators, and she does amazing work. This is her Instagram, her website, and if you would like to contribute to her as a thank you, that is her PayPal if you want to go ahead and give her a tip. Now, without further ado, I'd like to hand the floor over to Gladys, Jose.
All right, let me navigate the screen real quick so I can share my screen. Or I don't know if you have to unshare it.
Yeah, go ahead and share yours.
Okay. Wait, where did it go? Oh, on the bottom. Sorry, bear with me, you guys. I'm not like super Zoom savvy. We're good? All right, so welcome to my TED Talk. I'm kidding, we're not doing TED Talk. So I'm a little nervous. Heads up, my presentation is like more GIF oriented because I'm not super into PowerPoint. So here it goes. Like Victor said, I have 5 books under my belt so far. I graduated from UCF in 2012 and pretty much started working on my illustration portfolio right after. But while I was working on my portfolio, I was a graphic designer. I did freelance work for Scholastic Book Fairs and Tangerine Press. And it wasn't until 2018. So it took me 6 hard years of working on my portfolio and stuff before getting my very first book deal, which was The Fresh Princess, inspired by Will Smith. No, I don't know him personally. I did talk to his manager, so I know him by association, kind of. We're gonna go with that. But it was a really great experience to work on those first 2 books, and it wasn't really what I imagined my first book being. It was kind of like a huge surprise, but I don't know. And I always thought like, oh no, I peaked. Like this is gonna be the best book I've worked on, and then I'm not gonna get any other book ever. But thankfully, I've gotten 3 other books published, and I am currently working on more than 9 books actually. But I didn't want to fill up the screen with boxes. I can't do any cover reveals or anything, which sucks. I was really hoping I'd have a cover to reveal today, but they pushed it back till Wednesday. But I'm working on like 4 different book series for middle grade. I'm doing like 2 middle grades, an extension of the dinosaur books that were already published. There's supposed to be a 3rd Fresh Princess. That's all I can say. And yeah, so it's just like a waiting for me right now. So it's those 5 books and then these 9 plus that I can't talk about. So a little bit about my background. As Victor said, my parents were born in DR, my mom and dad, and my dad came to the US in the 80s. My mom was in DR till 1986. She was a teacher there. But when she came to the States, you know, she had to get a job, any job, and she eventually became a citizen. And then I came along and keep picture of me. In 1989, I was born in Miami, Florida. Sorry, I'm like, I was born in Miami, Florida. I promise I know my bio, but I just have like stuff written down. I moved to Orlando when I was in kindergarten. And basically from that point on, when we moved here to Orlando, I was raised by a single mom. So single mom, new to the US or semi-new to the US, there's a lot of expectations when you're a first generation American. And it was education above everything. It was all about getting my grades, best grades, going to college, and getting that career that would like level up our family, like doctor, lawyer, just something that was a guaranteed job. So I never really had an exact dream like growing up. Like I wanted to be a singer. That dream was squashed when I was in middle school. And growing up, I just knew that I had to get a real job. That was what was expected. So yeah, it was always about grades. I was pretty much a straight A student. If I got anything below an A, it was like, you're not going to be a doctor now. So it was just like this immense pressure. At first, when I started Valencia Community College, I was a therapist major for like a semester. Then I realized that I couldn't really help people. I couldn't sit there and talk to people because I'm normally the talker in the group. So as a therapist, you have to be a good listener. And I realized that that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. So from there, I thought maybe I could be in architecture because I was really, really good at math. And I liked the design aspect of it. And this is where I started kind of realizing like, okay, maybe I want to do something a little bit more creative. And architecture, good salary. It's a job that's always going to be around. And my mom was all for it. That lasted 2 semesters. And I don't know what's going on with this light. It's supposed to be a cat. So pretend there's a cat there, a little cat gift. So the following, I think this was like by the 3rd semester of college. So there were a lot of wasted semesters. Thankfully, my mom didn't like bug out or anything, and she was very supportive. I took a design 1 class, and I didn't really have the intention of doing graphic design just yet. But one of the things the professor in that class said was, if you are going to do anything art related, and up until that point, I did like art, but as like a hobby. But he said, if you want to do something art related, graphic design was the way to go, because you could have a job and have some sort of salary and still be creative. So instantly when he said that, I was like, yes, that's what I'm doing. Oh, there's the cat gift. So yeah, because us graphic designers are always in front of a computer. So at this point, I have a plan. I'm going to be a graphic designer. I had a plan to become a level entry designer at a company. And even, I think it was like a month or 2 before graduation, I had a list of like 20 design firms in the area or within like a driving distance that I was planning on doing cold calls and somehow getting a job. I had an opportunity from my internship job to get a graphic design job there. So I had a plan, and my mom was happy because I was going to have that 9 to job, insurance, set, job, life. That was the goal. And a month before graduation, we had a portfolio critique. And I sat down at Victor knows the story, and Castro. So I'm sitting down having my portfolio critiqued, and so far the art directors are liking it. And I'm feeling pretty confident. I swore I was going to get a job right there on the spot. That's not how it works, but I thought it did. And finally, like the last critique was with Ethan Long, and I wasn't even supposed to sit down with him. I think Castro, who was coordinating the event, she actually said, there's like a spot open, go sit down with him. Or do you want to fill in that spot? And I sat down with him, and he's flipping through my portfolio, and it was the final like 2 illustrations. It was these really bad, when I look back at it, bookmarks that I had designed. And he starts like jamming his finger at my portfolio, and he's like, this is what you need to be doing. And I was like, design work, duh. Like, because I at the time was only seeing illustrations as an element of design. I didn't see it as its own like career path. So long story short, I went home that night and I'm like trying to figure, I'm like, okay, so he told me, you should consider doing children's books. And I'm like, what the heck is that? I mean, I know what a children's book is, but I didn't realize that was a career that I could actually do, much less something that I could do from home, which was kind of like to me. And so I go home and I start, it's like really happening in slow motion, isn't it? So I go home and I start researching picture books, and specifically all the picture books that I loved as a child. I was obsessed with Amelia books. I loved all the like Matilda books, anything that had like pictures in it. I picked them up just to kind of see exactly what would be expected of me as an illustrator, aside from like the design elements that I had spent 5 years at that point learning. And mind you, I'm graduating. I didn't have any illustration class under my belt, so I was graduating with a graphic design degree, and then suddenly now I want to add illustration to this. But I wasn't about to go back to school. So I sat down with my mom and had this talk with her again for the third time in my college career. I'm like, yeah, Mom, so about that plan that I had, it's changing again. And it was pretty much like I told her, like I'm gonna still graduate with my graphic design degree. I'm not planning on like, trashing that completely, because I know that I can still benefit from it and it can still be kind of like a plan B. But I told her that I was not planning on getting a full-time job because I wanted to freelance, because it would give me the flexibility to, work on my illustration stuff. So here are the steps that I took that worked out and allowed my mom to not like disown me as her only daughter. So I thought long and hard about what my game plan was going to be. I knew I wanted to do illustrating. I figured that if I freelance, it would allow me the time and energy to pick and choose what projects I'm taking and have the time to work on illustrating, because illustrating isn't something that you can like do overnight. You have to work on a portfolio, you have to attend conferences, or talks like this, just to kind of get to know the community and the environment and exactly what the job is. And I communicated that with her. I told her, like, I worked long and hard on my graphic design career or degree. I'm changing that. So I'm like, just, I didn't just like change overnight and just not tell her what I was doing, is my point. Step 3, we compromised. So the compromise was that I would freelance graphic design for a year and see if I could make some sort of, solid living to get by. If that didn't work out, then I needed to get some sort of work, because you're out of school now, you have responsibilities. So there was a nice compromise. I was fortunate enough to have a good amount of freelance work, so that wasn't an issue. The next thing is to follow through. So it's very easy to have this big dream that's hard to like accomplish, and to say you're going to do it and then not do it. And if your parents or whoever is kind of giving you that space to dream is not watching you work tirelessly on this, they're going to get very discouraged. And that's where I feel like conflict can happen. And you're going to start hearing family members and people saying like, oh, you're just a dreamer. That's something that I had to deal with, because my family saw what I was doing as freelancing as, I don't know if this term's universal, but I was taking on chambitas, like little side jobs. I didn't have a real job because I was freelancing, and I kept telling them like, I'm making, like I'm still making a living here. It's a job. But because I wasn't working 9 to 5, everyone in my family was like, oh yeah, Gladys isn't working. She doesn't have a job. Jokes on them. I did. But what they did see me do is work on my freelance work, but then they saw me tirelessly work on my portfolio and on attending conferences and events like this, because I wanted to prove to them, despite not having a book just yet, I was still working towards something. And I think that just made it easier. What did I do? It made it easier. And number 5, be stubborn as heck, because again, you're going to have those doubters. You're going to have those people that are going to say you're not really working. And this applies for things outside of just illustrating. This can go towards if you have a music dream, if you want to start your own star band, Today Nice, Today Job band. If you want to do anything that's out of alignment of what is expected of you, yes, compromise, but also be a little stubborn, because it's very easy to get discouraged, especially in careers that take time to get into. And for me, at least, it took 6 years to even land an agent. And there were so many times where I wanted to quit and just, yeah, sure, I'll go get a job and get my health insurance and become the adult that they wanted me to be. But I didn't, and I just kept freelancing. And there's nothing wrong with freelancing, but people have their own ways of thinking. So just be extremely stubborn. And step number six is have a really, really great and big reason for why you're following this specific dream. For me, with illustrating, I had so many books that I loved. And I think that the reason I didn't pursue illustrating and didn't see myself in that career was because I didn't see people like me in books, and I didn't see people like me illustrating books. Aside from the illustrator from Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day, Ray Cruz. He grew up in Spanish Harlem. Spanish Harlem. But aside from him, a lot of the illustrators that I knew and authors that I knew were not like me. And a lot of the books that I was seeing growing up, I did not see myself ever. So I think that aside from the culture of wanting me to have a 9-to-5 solid job, like a doctor, architect, psychology teacher, not seeing myself represented in these books or represented as an author illustrator of these books made it harder for me to grow up knowing that this was a job that someone like me could do. So I did research starting up, and I found these statistics online when I first started back in 2012. When I first started pursuing this, there were only 1.5% of books represented Latinos. So that further validated my point. Like, of course, I'm not going to see myself if only 1.5% of books have people that look like me. And in 2018, at that point, there was, I think the US population for Latinos was 18.3%. At this point, we had gone up from 1.5 to 5% of picture books had Latinx representation. But that's only like a 3-point-something% growth. My math sucks now. That's just a 3.5% growth in 6 years. And I honestly felt like we could do better. So that was my reason. My reason was that I am part of that 18%. And I needed to help fill in that void that is lacking in the industry. And I needed to bring that voice so that kids picking up books now see themselves, and hopefully we can start filling in that gap and having kids that come from our backgrounds say at a young age, you know what, I want to pursue illustrating. Let me start young. Let me figure this out young, and let me work towards it. And also break that stereotype that illustration isn't a job, and that illustration isn't a job that we can't do just because of the pressure and the expectation put upon us for being first-generation Americans and having that dream. Like, our dream isn't just that 9-to-5. Our dream is endless. Like, we can do anything that anyone else is out there doing. So that this is kind of like my call to Hispanic illustrators out there, specifically if you're looking into doing illustrating. There is such a void that needs to be filled. So if you like illustrating, get your stuff out there like yesterday, because there's just too much work to do, and there's not enough of us out there pursuing this. So you're going to have to be really stubborn about it. You're going to have to communicate with your parents. If you have any pushback from parents or spouses or your community, yeah, it's hard, but if it's something that you're very passionate about doing, fight for it and know who you're fighting for, which is like the next generation. So that way this career isn't a stigma or isn't a chamba for them. This can be a real career for the next generation. So yeah, that's my little presentation. And I can take questions now. I don't know how we're doing the question part. Okay, cool.
That's awesome. Thank you, Gladys. I think what's going to happen is I'm going to read it out.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and switch out screens. So if you unshare yours, and I'm going to share mine, which is going to be seamless, hopefully.
Stop sharing.
So if you have any, thank you. If you have any questions for Gladys, go ahead and add them to the chat, and we will go ahead and we'll go ahead and ask them. So, all right.
I feel like we needed to have that background music, the da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na.
Hold on a second. There are some questions. I'm just trying to organize my screen. So it's all me. This is all my fault right now. So just bear with me for a second.
Just stare at him, you guys. Just stare.
I'll cut it out from the final video.
Thank you.
Or make it longer. I could do that too.
Draw it out and add like an orchestral score to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Swell.
Yes, yes. All right, here we go. Let's just ask a question. While I'm trying to figure out my screen here. Anthony's asking, now that you've traveled this path, what advice would you give to a budding illustrator who wants to go down the same road?
Oh, I wish I would have added a slide about that. There are organizations like AIGA that, like SCB, like AIGA, there's one called SCBWI that's specifically for children's books, Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. I would attend those conferences just because they have a lot of classes that gear towards illustrating. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of illustration online courses that I took. So after I graduated with my graphic design degree and knowing absolutely nothing about illustrating, I took online courses through svslearn.com. So it's a Society of Visual Storytelling.com. And I did a lot of courses through there just to improve my illustration skills. Because again, I was a graphic designer by choice and by education. So when it came to illustrating for picture books, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Like I pretty much went into this starting from scratch. So get to know the community, attend conferences or events, talks like this, start following people on Instagram, other artists, just to kind of see what they're doing and how their work process are. Work on your portfolio. Have at least 10 pieces and get your portfolio out there. The best way to get portfolio work out there is through social media, but also attending events that offer portfolio critiques. So the SCBWI conferences that I mentioned, they actually offer portfolio one-on-one critiques. And what I did was from 2014 to 2018, 2 times a year, I would attend these conferences and sit down one-on-one with another illustrator or an art director and have them critique my portfolio. And basically each conference, I would take that feedback and rework my entire portfolio and then come back. So those are the steps that I took, and what I normally just, tell everyone else to do, like, get out there, educate yourself as much as you can and work on your portfolio. I can hear you.
So you're saying that you took extra classes at the to kind of like help you try to figure out how to draw? What exactly did you end up learning? Because
I,
obviously you already knew how to draw,
I
but
knew how, I knew how to draw, but I didn't. Let me I guess like show off. Okay, so I knew how to draw people. I knew how to like illustrate portraits and faces and stuff, but I didn't know how to tell a story. And with picture books, everything you're drawing, I don't know if you can see everything you draw when you're illustrating specifically for picture books has to tell a story. So I learned a lot of storytelling techniques and also how to pose characters, because you can be a really good artist and be able to draw portraits very well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have very dynamic characters either. So you're going to want to learn how to make scenes basically, and also develop your style further, because obviously like people don't really look like this, and this took time. Like it took all 4 portfolio critiques or years, or no, all 6 portfolio critique years of me developing how I was going to draw my character. So it's just a combination of like, you basically have to re-educate yourself on how you draw a little bit, because again, you can draw very realistic, beautiful paintings, but picture books needs a certain look and feel, and you need to be able to just tell a story in one scene.
And when you went and got your portfolios reviewed, how did you present your work? Was it all kind of like a traditional portfolio?
Traditional
Was it an
portfolio.
iPad? So
No.
you went in with like the little kind of like portfolio and showed it that way?
Super old school. Unless you know personally like who's critiquing your portfolio and they're not gonna like care. Yeah, just stick old school is the best way. Print it out best quality you can, because you will get critiqued based on, just like in graphic design, you get critiqued if your colors are all off. And just have them in sleeves. Sometimes if you're doing like a portfolio showcase, you want to go a little further with your portfolio and just make sure your prints are extraordinary. But yeah, that's just very traditional.
Thank you. Cortez Phillips asks, at school, were you treated differently?
What part of school or what time in school? Because elementary, high school, or college? Because college, I was fine.
In college, what?
In college, I was fine.
But
In high school, I was in a mainly Hispanic neighborhood, but I do remember in middle school, I had been transferred because they built a brand new school. And I was amongst a few brown people there. I wasn't treated differently, I don't think, that I can recall. That was in 7th grade, so I'd have to like go back in my memory bank. But I felt different. I felt like I needed to work a little harder, but I don't think it was necessarily because of the school, but just because what was expected from me at home. Like, I feel like as a Latino, there's a certain expectation you need to meet at home and at school. Thankfully, I didn't feel it out at school, but I felt it a lot at home. So I rambled, sorry.
No, it's perfect. Thank you. Jesse asks, are you seeing more representation happening in the illustration world since you've started your career?
Yes. So like in the graphic that I had shown, in 2012, it was 1.5% of the books being represented. And in 2018, it was, what was it, 5? So it did grow a little bit. Considering that we make up, 18% of the population, I still feel like 5% is kind of bad. It could be better, but there's also not many of us in the industry. When I've attended the SCBWI conferences, I'm one of the few people of color in attendance, and that's probably where I have felt a little different. And they're very welcoming, but it's just, you notice when there's not enough of you out there, and there's not enough of us out there to fill in that 18% gap that there is. it's getting better, but it's not there yet. We could do better.
Okay, thank you.
The industry, I will say that the industry is actively searching for Latinos though, and people of color.
Mari asks, se pueden tener varios estilos como ilustrador de libros. Can one have different illustration styles as a book illustrator?
Do you want me to answer in Spanish or?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. En español no es perfecto, pero so, el consejo que yo diera ahí fuera, si tú tienes 2 o 3 diferentes estilos, asegúrate que los estilos que tú estás haciendo son buenos, son consistent, que sean, o si tú vas a hacer como 5 ilustraciones en un estilo, que esos 5 se vea como que tú tienes un consistency y que tú sabes lo que tú estás haciendo en cada uno de los estilos, y que los 3 estilos sean igual de, like that they're at the same strength level. Like you don't want, I'm sorry, I'm going into English. Tú no quieres que, por ejemplo, tú tengas un estilo aquí que quizá del 1 al 10 está como en 5, entonces que los otros 2 estilos estén en 10. Asegúrate que todo sea consistent across the board in skills.
So you can have multiple styles, but just make sure that each one of those styles is on par, really at the top, and one doesn't suffer against the other.
Yeah, because like agents and art directors will see that as like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. They're like exploring and trying to figure out what they want to do. But if you have 3 different styles, but they're all super, super strong, that's fine. They say not to have multiple styles, but that's fine.
Okay. Have you drawn in different styles in your own work, or have you stuck with one particular style?
I can't talk about it.
Oh, I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah, okay. I have.
So.
Some of my recent work, I've started developing the styles a bit. So I'm working on my color palettes and my character designs like a little bit different, but I can't share anything because.
Next time.
Yeah.
Hispanic Heritage Month 2021. Thanks, Trina.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Ginny's asking, what would be the entry-level pay for an illustrator? What do you charge clients, or what did you charge clients as a freelancer? How does the whole pricing structure happen?
So graphic design-wise, I'll start there because since that was like my origin place. I did start off at 20 and then worked my way up to like 35 an hour. And then for illustrators, it varies. So the way that you get paid as an illustrator to work on picture books is that you get an advance against royalties. So an advance is a big chunk of money that every time your book is sold, and let's say your royalty amount is 5%, and that 5% goes towards the advance that they paid you up front. And until that's paid off, you don't get additional royalties. But prices per books can range from like $8,000 to $40,000. It just depends on where you land and what project you're working on and what publisher you're working with. But it like the starting is $8,000. Is what I've like seen.
And what's the time frame that they gave you to actually complete that book?
That's also, it varies from book to book. The Fresh Princess, they gave me like 4 months to work on that. It was just a very like boom, 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 but it was for Will Smith. And if you would have said jump, I would have jumped. So they said 4 months. I was like, I'll do it in 2. I'm kidding. But like this one, I worked on it for like a year. And then the ones that I'm working on now, I've worked on it for like a year and a half. So that ranges too. It depends on the project, but from 6 months to a year and a half is the range that I've seen or experienced.
Perfect. Liz is asking, what do people looking at a portfolio, whether for a portfolio review or a possible job, look for in a portfolio for children's book illustration? What points are important to them that aren't important for other creative focuses?
If you can have literally like pieces that tell that story, like a good exercise that I would do for your portfolio pieces is to try and have a story for each piece. Don't just have like a character and have that character doing nothing. They're going to always look for that story within each piece. If you look at my portfolio on my website, each one of those illustrations, I try to have some sort of story to them. So they're going to look for that. They're going to look for your characters. They want to see children mainly because it's for picture books. And they're going to want to see animals and a few older characters, but that's not really like a deal breaker, I don't think. If you like want to stick to like let's say you don't like drawing elephants, don't draw an elephant in your portfolio because you might get a job that involves an elephant and then you're going to cry. So put stuff in your portfolio that you want to do and represent, but you just want to tell the story. That's like the main thing that every critique has said, every critiquer.
Cool. And Jen asks, did you find an agent by going to the conference? What do you look for when selecting an agent?
I met my agent at a conference side event. So it wasn't one of the full big conferences, but it was a free event that they were having at a local library, but through them. What I looked for was someone, I'm super needy when it comes to communication. Like I need to be able to like jump on the phone with you and be like, like, what are we doing? So I needed an agent that was willing to talk to me and wasn't going to leave me like out in the, like, you don't want an agent that has so many clients that they don't have time for you. So look for that specifically. And before you even sign with an agent, if you have someone that approaches you and they want to sign you, schedule a one-on-one Zoom chat or a voice call and just get to know them a little bit, kind of like agent date them and see if it's someone that you're going to click well, because you're going to deal or be with that person for a very long time, hopefully. Like my agent is literally one of my best friends. And like, I know that they say like, don't mix, business and like pleasure or whatever, but she's someone that I can talk to about anything. And you want to, depending on your personality, I'm very needy. Like I said, I want to be able to like talk to you. So it was very important for her to be someone that I can talk to. So, and there are agents that cater to different personalities too. So just find someone that matches you well. You don't want to have someone that makes you nervous or that, makes you feel bad or that is super overly critical and will make you cry every time, because that's a sure way to get discouraged. And you need someone that can like give you feedback that still leaves you feeling good.
Maria is asking, have you been in touch with the users of your illustrations? Have you seen the reactions being represented in the story illustrated? Yeah,
so when Fresh Princess came out, there was this huge like hashtag with all the little girls dressing up as Destiny, and I'm gonna start crying because like no joke, it hit me here. Like it was like the most precious thing ever, because that little girl that I showed you earlier of myself, that picture, she never saw herself. So just to know that kids out there are seeing themselves and they have a character they can dress up as, like, that's never been a thing. That wasn't a thing. Like, I didn't have a superhero that I can dress up as, and, or like just anyone. So just seeing these girls with like the striped leggings and stuff, just like, yeah. And I'm a mom, so I have a 4-year-old girl that gets to grow up in this world. And I kid you not, like, it is my mission in life to make sure that all these kids are represented in some shape, way, or form.
That's
and
awesome.
It feels good.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
Brooklyn asks, how does freelancing work? And is it enough money to live off of?
It depends. You have to, the first few years, I will admit I didn't push enough to get paid enough. So you have to be a little tough on your negotiation skills. You can live off of it though. Like from the very beginning, I was able to live off of it. Mind you, I was living with my mom too, but I think if I'm just gonna throw out numbers, like the first year, and when it wasn't even a full year, I think I brought in like 24K, which isn't a lot sometimes, but for the first year it wasn't horrible, and I was able to like start off somewhere. So but definitely educate yourself on competitive numbers and negotiate that, and if you do that, you'll be able to make a living like with your clients. Just make sure you're getting paid fairly, but you can do it.
And Brooklyn also has a follow-up. Do you think you can freelance as a teen?
You can, I think so. If you have a really solid portfolio, I think you can. I don't have that experience because, again, as a teenager, I was supposed to be a therapist, so I wasn't thinking about this. The only thing that I would say though is that the industry is it's competitive. So as a teenager, I mean, put your work out there. You never know. Like, you literally have nothing to lose and all to gain. So
Let's try it out.
yeah, just try it out. And I mean, like for the conferences, if you want to attend those, sometimes they do have like an age limit. I know for SCBWI, you have to at least be 18 or be accompanied by an adult. So if you're a teenager and you want to start getting yourself out there and potentially starting, it's not like it's completely closed off for you. There's options.
These are great questions. Gabby's asking, how do you calculate your rates? By illustration, by pages, or something else?
Well, I obsessively tracked my process and my hours when I was working on my portfolio, just so that I would know roughly how much time the thumbnail phase would take, and how much time sketching would take, and how much time, doing the final art would take. And then based off of that, like if they come at me with, they reach out to my agent, but if they come with a number and I see, okay, they want 32 pages and they want to pay me like $2,000, obviously that's not going to cut it, because divide 2,000 by 32, I'm not, hold on, what number is that? I don't know. It's not enough. Basically, 2,000 by 32, that's $62 per page, per illustration. And if, let's say, each illustration is taking you 15 hours, you're making $4 an hour. Yeah. And that's not going to cut it. So you kind of have to work backwards. If you're charging by illustration and need to give someone a phone number, your rate can go anywhere from what you feel comfortable doing. So if an illustration takes you 15 hours and you want to make 20 an hour, that means per illustration, you're looking at 300 per illustration. But that can range. It really depends on who your client is. But just know, like, my advice for you to figure out your numbers would be to figure out how much time something takes you. Like, have an average.
Your agent negotiates those numbers, or do you?
So the way that process goes is that an editor or an art director from a publishing house will email her with an offer, and we look at the offer. If it's good, she'll still try and push for more. If it's bad, we're like, and she'll push for more. But she's the one that normally negotiates it, but she always negotiates it through me first. So if it's an amount that she might think that it's a little high, or that's good, I might not think it's good enough. So then I might push her a little bit and say, like, hey, can you, get me more? And then I'll do it. Because it also depends on the timeline. If they want the project in 4 months versus a year, I want to get paid more, because that means during those 4 months, I'm going to be crunching a lot of work and most likely pulling a lot of all-nighters to get this project done. So you want to make sure you're being compensated for that overtime.
Cool. When checking out agents, this is Liz asking, when checking out agents, I saw a few asking children's book illustrators to send in a portfolio or a dummy. What do you think of making a dummy to show clients what you can do, or to see how long it takes you to do that?
I would totally suggest to try out a dummy just to see what you can do, like what your time frame is. It would never hurt to put in some time and get that practice in ever. That's like, do it if you can. And if you have the time to do it, make that dummy just to understand the structure of a book. But you don't necessarily need to do it in order to get an agent.
Okay. Mitzi's asking, has your practice changed in any way since the pandemic?
Sorry. My daughter is home now. Before she was in daycare. So, yeah, it's changed a lot. I used to work normal people hours, and now I don't. Now I have to work inhumane hours, normally from like 8 to like 1 a.m. and then during nap times. So the pandemic has been kind of like, but and then also I work all 7 days of the week. So like when my husband's off, I'm in work mode. And then on the days that he's working, just for me to be able to like make that, like fill in those 40 hours or like to just meet these deadlines, I'm having to go into overdrive. But that's parent stuff. So yeah, my practices have changed.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And this is the last question, I think. No? Gabby's asking a follow-up. So the publishing houses look for your services based on your style. Do you have to pitch the style you feel is right?
Yeah, well, okay. So for Fresh Princess, they did have me kind of audition for it. They had already seen my style beforehand and they liked it, but they wanted to see what I kind of envisioned for Fresh Princess. So they might see your portfolio work and like your style, but they might say, okay, do a scene with a girl with flair. That was the keyword that they gave me for Fresh Princess. And I didn't really know what that meant, a girl with flair. And I Googled it and I Googled the wrong spelling of the word flare. So I was getting like flare guns and stuff. And I was like, I am still lost. So yeah, so the publisher will see your style. They might ask you to pitch or to give samples, but for the most part, it's based on your work that you have presenting on your portfolio or website or Instagram.
That's awesome. Do you have anything else outside of illustration that you'd like to explore?
Well, outside of illustration, but it's still in the same realm of publishing, I'm currently exploring writing more. Specifically, I don't know why I'm doing this to myself, but I'm trying to write a graphic novel, which like it's
yeah,
like illustrating is one thing. Trying to write and figure out like screenwriting and all that's like a whole new ballpark. But and then outside of publishing and stuff, I don't have really many hobbies. This is my hobby. Yeah. Art is my hobby, so I don't. It's what I do on my free time.
And just a couple of more follow-ups. You mentioned to put your stuff out there, social media. What are some sources of inspiration for you, whether at websites or artists or
Instagram?
Instagram. Anybody you should be following?
Oh gosh, like just go on my page and then follow everyone I follow. Just
fair enough.
Go crazy. No, but look up the hashtag specifically if you want to do kids books. Kids lit artist, like LIT, like literature. Follow that hashtag. You can follow. Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. Kyle B. Webster is an amazing illustrator. He does great brushes.
Creates the brushes. Yeah.
Yeah, he makes amazing brushes. Yeah, just follow people that I follow. Like I have like I've like gotten a good bank of people, but also look for the publishers. So follow HarperCollins, Penguin, Scholastics, all of the publishers that you can find. And then look at picture books, like go to Barnes & Noble, look at the illustrator's name, Like pick up the books that you're like, oh, I wouldn't mind illustrating a book similar to this. Look at the artist, follow them, and like to see what they're doing and how, like, find out their story.
You said Kyle Webster, you're a digital artist, right? Or do you
Yeah.
do anything? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In Photoshop, I assume?
I actually stopped using, I still use Photoshop, but the iPad came out with a really amazing app, or Adobe came out with a really amazing iPad app called Fresco, which, like, I kid you not, you guys, like 95% of my work done now is done 100, or not 100, that's not right math. Okay, 95% of my work is done on the iPad now.
Okay.
It's just, it's an amazing app. So I think there's like a trial or like a smaller fee you can pay, but if we're all doing graphic design and are unfortunately stuck on that subscription, you get it for free. So.
All right, Gladys, and last question. What does your dream illustration project look like?
Ooh, I want to work with Oprah.
Oprah.
No, but
Very good.
I'm just throwing that out there. So if she sees it, or if you guys like hashtag it enough, maybe she'll see it. No, but my dream project would honestly be, and this is like a story that I've been kind of exploring for like another graphic novel idea. It would be like a semi-biographical book about being a first-generation American, and like the struggles growing up, like that lack of not the lack, but like the language barrier and the culture barrier would be a fun project that I think would be cool to do someday.
That's awesome. I look forward to reading it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Like I said, I'm super proud to be able to introduce you, to talk to you tonight.